Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Chad Horenfeldt. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about his book, The Strategic Customer Success Manager, a blueprint for elevating your impact and advancing your career. Chad,
Yes.
welcome. Where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me either on LinkedIn or they can find me at my site, strategiccustomersuccess.com.
Reading your book, it is such a mine, a mine of really good information for anybody who wants to become a customer success manager. I mean, you've got so much experience, and you're so honest in terms of some of the times that you messed up. But it's such a great book. It's anybody that's basically either starting their career in customer success or currently a customer success manager. It's got to be a book to read. What was your inspiration for it?
Yeah, thank you. There's three parts to it. I think the first thing is I've developed a habit over the years of just reading, and I encourage everyone to blend that into your daily life.
Hmm.
And I've always learned from really good books, and so I wanted to do something along those lines where I would write something and share what I've learned, and just have that in a book format. I think the second thing is that um, one of my purposes is really to help people,
Hmm.
and again, like, what better way to do that is than writing a book and distributing that
Hmm.
globally. So that was the second part, and I also thought that there was a missing component in terms of how customer success managers, or customer success people, account managers, anyone really working with customers, how can they level up? Especially, I'd say, when we're in this sort of a new era post COVID, where there's just more pressure. And when you have those interactions with people directly, because now we have AI, like, how can you make those the most? How can you make sure that you're asking the right questions,
Yeah.
doing the right follow up? And I'd say the third one is just personally, like, you can see some of my family on the wall.
Hmm.
I think it's a big goal to write a book. It took me 3.5 years, and just wanted to set an example for my kids where if you set your sights higher, you can achieve like a longer term objective, and what kind of goes into that, so they can see that whole process.
I think that's great. It's wonderful to have that purpose and want to share like that. Um, and I think that in my experience, there was always people in customer success. My background is IT, and certainly with the advent of SaaS, there was a more customer service managers, and there wasn't a blueprint. It was like, so what, you could see people going, what do I do? Well, you need to be more like Dave. Well,
Yes.
what does Dave do? Well, I don't know, but he just seems to do a really good job. And it's like, well, sit down with Dave for an hour, and that would seem to be it. And then people
Yes.
just muddle on through.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting is, like, I had a similar somewhat experience. You know, when I started to progress and do well, I remember one person saying, we were in a room. I was a customer success manager. I was moved on to different accounts, and we had hired a new customer success manager, and he was a little overwhelmed. He's like, Chad, like, worked so hard with these accounts. Like, how am I expected to do that? And there wasn't necessarily an answer. It's just like, well, that's what you have to do. But I'd say that if I rewound myself back to that time, um, it wasn't until I learned that what I really needed to do to progress in my career faster was to share that knowledge that I had. And the book is obviously a end result, and a greater scale of sharing that knowledge. But the book, what it does is not only does it teach people practical approaches to leveling up themselves and how to best work with customers, but it's also about advancing your career.
Mm.
So that tip in terms of sharing your knowledge for a lot of people doesn't come natural, because the inclination is like, well, okay, well, I have my duties for the day. I'm going to do that, and that's what I'm going to focus on because that's what I'm being measured on, and that's great. But if you're really trying to advance yourself in your career, if you think about the values within your company, those are really important aspects that you're being assessed on. And it's not just necessarily, that core function that you're doing, but are you having an impact across your organization? And so that's what I was really trying to help people with, so that they can potentially level up faster depending on whatever their career goals are.
And I
And
guess
so,
that's the difference between when you talk about strategic customer success manager, that's what you mean by being strategic. Because I think, if you start off in a technical role, part of is your technicality, therefore, and I hold all that because I'm known for being for my knowledge. And actually, as you move on, what you have to do is actually share that and be known as a sharer of knowledge. Go to Tim because he'll help you out, and that's the sort of thing that will get you the promotions rather than I'm going to sit in the corner and protect all of my knowledge.
yeah, there's three parts to it. Like, if you go online and you type in strategic customer success, you may find my book now, which is good. But
Yeah, well
traditionally, what
done,
you'd find, yes, thank you,
SDR.
AI and Google and everything. But traditionally, what you'd find is roles called like strategic customer success managers. And what I've tried to do is say, like, listen, being a strategic customer success manager, it's not a title; it's your mindset, it's your approach to things, and it's not just, your approach to customers, because the idea around it is it's not just focusing, as you said, like, on the technical skills that you have, but really understanding your customer, understanding the pressures that they're under, both their company and that individual, and then connecting that to your product. Because unfortunately, the default is typically we start in our product because that's what we're comfortable with, that's what we know, that's really what's been told. Because a lot of these people in customer success manager, account manager roles, the way they start their onboarding is actually in the product. It's like, okay, first thing, learn the product.
Yeah.
And those soft skills, there's not a lot of training for. And so the book was designed to help with that. Um, and so you focus on the product first, and then when it comes to, our area, there's usually a focus on what's called adoptions. Like, are you using the particular product? And really, what you need to be focusing on is outcomes. Like, what is it they're actually trying to achieve? And that's applicable to everyone. And so it's moving what value is beyond what I'd call vanity metrics, some dashboards you might have in your product, to what is actually important to the customer, and what do they deem value that's going to result in them continuing working with you, and hopefully expanding working with you. And then the third part is, how can you up level yourself within your company, build those right relationships, because it's not just your individual performance with your customers, again, that's going to determine whether you're successful. um, the hidden secret around promotions is that, there's only certain number of promotions that typically in a company, and the other functions are going to be decision makers as part of that, because they might look and say, okay, well, I know that person, they really helped me out, and I can see the impact they're having. Those people have a greater opportunity to get promoted, because they've been, again, impacting beyond, just their individual kind of area, but across the company. And so it's just super important to build those relationships. And unfortunately, I'd say in customer success, we tend to be very insular. And if we look at LinkedIn, it becomes this echo chamber of, the other groups, only if they only did this, then we would be successful. And
Yeah.
again, you have that opportunity to make those improvements, and you should be looking for those opportunities, and that will help you continue to grow.
So you talk about it's a blueprint for elevating your impact and advancing your career. Tell us about the blueprint.
Yeah, in terms of the blueprint, first, obviously, it starts with the definitions. Then it goes into, if you're a new CSM, what does that 30, 60, 90-day
Yep.
look like? But I'd say in terms of sort of that overall blueprint, um, it can start very small. So let's say that, either you're a new CSM, or you've
Yeah,
been,
let's do that.
been doing this for a fair amount of time. The one thing that you can start to be doing is, one is better preparation going into a meeting. So having a sense of, okay, well, what did that person do? What's going on in that particular company? What products do they create? And so I have, like, this 3C framework around that. Like, learn about the company, learn about their customers, learn about the challenges that they have. So that's the first thing, is just being more prepared going into a meeting, and focusing on their business and not just necessarily, your product. Then the second thing is it's asking better questions. And so if you know what their challenges are or what is it you want to achieve in that particular meeting, then come prepared with some specific questions and stop using the run of the mill questions like, well, what are your priorities?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, customers will hear that and they'll just be very jaded and maybe give you just some BS answer. It depends on how much trust you have with them. But nobody wants to repeat themselves. Like nobody wants to feel that you're just starting over, like it's like Groundhog Day, and it's that same repeat process. They want to know that you care about them, you know their business, you know what's going on, and that you're continuing on this progression. And so that would be the second thing would be to ask better questions. Again, then get into a framework called the ORS framework, which is like a psychotherapy technique that was used so that it was helpful for patients to get over certain things like addictions. The traditional way was like, you have a drinking problem, well, stop drinking, and like the patient would be berated. But this technique really takes it from the customer's perspective, and it leverages things like active listening, so repeating back what the person had said, using affirmations. So that's the A part of the ORS framework, where it's like you're saying, hey, like, great job getting to this particular point or hitting this particular milestone, and really being their cheerleader. And the last thing is using summaries. So, going back, looking at how you've reflected on various things that person has said and sort of summarizing it up, like you're a lawyer, in front of a judge, and saying, okay, so what you've said is this, this, and this, and what we've talked about is this and this and this, and then even turning it over to them and saying, okay, well, what's the next step? And so taking a more formulaic approach to influencing your customer. And then it gets into further nuances where you can assess their motivation, where you can just determine, you can ask them a question such as, from 1 to 10, how motivated are you to take action on based on what we've discussed?
Yeah.
And so at that point, you're looking for visual cues and, you know, determining, okay, are they ambivalent here? Do we really think they're going to take action? They said yes, 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 but let's ask one of these qualifying questions just to ensure that we're all on the same path. And so again, like that's that next level. And then the last part I'd say is taking those approaches and those new ways that you're doing discovery and asking more of these strategic type questions, and then blending them in to your particular calls in a particular way. So if you're doing something like a business review, I talk about just revamping that completely
Yeah.
and doing it more of a discussion like format,
Yeah.
but using those techniques in those particular discussions to completely up level the discussion and change it from a review where you're kind of looking in the past to more of a forward looking approach where you're confirming what their outcomes are and then you're focusing on building a path. The traditional approach to like a business review would be to show up with a bunch of slides and literally bore your customer into tears.
Yeah.
And you just kind of like, oh, I got through my slides, oh, I'm done,
Yeah.
and checking the box. Where this is like, okay, let's have a really frank discussion. Like, you're off on these metrics. I sent this information to you, a few days in advance so you can review it. You've told me this is your goal, and we're off from here. So let's talk about how we can look to achieve that. Or has something changed in your business based on what I'm seeing that maybe we should go in a different direction? And so it's just a much better approach. You're not stuck in the weeds. And even if it's a smaller component to what you're doing, because we're all at different stages, different approaches based on whatever our roles are, you can blend in some of these strategic elements and build that out over time.
You also talk about cross-functional influence, don't you? Not just within this particular area, internally and externally, and bringing in people that maybe you're not the font of all knowledge, and bringing other people. So talk to us about that, because we can often be very siloed, can't we, in the way that we work?
Yeah, there's lots of different components to that. So, as an example, in my younger days as a CSM and in any customer facing role, you feel a bit like a superhero. Like you can do anything. Give me any problem, I'll solve it. Don't worry about it. Just hand it over to me. And really, that shouldn't necessarily be the case, because what would happen is sometimes you would fail and you'd feel like crap and that you failed. But um, and then you might start blaming people. You might start blaming the salespeople because they sold a really bad deal, or the product broke down, or that they didn't prioritize your feature. And you know, if you assume the best intent of people, and that's sort of what I talk about, it's usually not that they are trying to, have make you have a bad day, or hurt your numbers. It's just a matter of them maybe not having the right information, or even having their own pressures that they're under. And the way that you approach that will definitely, if you approach it from a collaborative perspective versus a combative, perspective, it's going to definitely change things. And so I talk about that where, and a good example would be a customer coming to you and saying, "Hey, we need this feature request. It's really important. I need this feature request." And the inclination of a traditional CSM is, sure, like, let me see what I can do. Like, yeah, okay, sure. And really, if you're being a cross-functional steward, you would want to really question what they're asking and why they're asking and what impact is it going to have. And so, even if it really makes sense, like, oh yeah, we should totally build that. Do we really need to build that feature when we already have a full lineup of features, and maybe we're already working on a feature that's going to really help that customer? So if you start to think about it from a business perspective, is that feature going to either make your business money, save your business money? Um, what is that overall impact going to be? Is it going to save that customer? Is it going to save a bunch of customers? And so you want to really push back and determine, how really important is that? Is it just an idea, or is it really, really important? Should I put it at the top of the list? Is it a must have or not? And asking those questions, being a little bit more directive in terms of doing your discovery. Then when you're working, with your cross-functional friend in product, you can say, listen, here's why it's important. I uncovered these particular requirements. We don't necessarily have to do it in the next 3 months. We can do it in the next 6 months. And I've also done research to find that these other 4 customers that are worth this amount
Yeah.
are affected as well.
Yeah.
And so that's being a really important steward in the business, because you're thinking beyond your customer, you're thinking about your company as a whole, and you're thinking about your colleague in product who has to make all these decisions because everyone's throwing stuff at them.
Yeah.
And so that's really how a strategic CSM should be thinking. And with AI, it's even easier, because you have now ChatGPT and Claude that could be connected into your engineering ticketing systems, and you could actually do a search to see which customers might be interested in a similar feature, but maybe they haven't fully connected them up. So it's really fascinating. You can go through your tickets, your support tickets, and pull out maybe similar customers, your calls, because they're also transcribed. And this gives the advantage to the CSM that they never had. And in fact, I think it's a further advantage where you could be outperforming not only your colleagues, but even your manager, because the tools that you now have, the ways that you can amalgamate data and present it, is phenomenal, and it gives you a better chance of demonstrating impact than you probably have ever had, that's ever existed. So it's a very interesting time, and my hope is that the book inspires other people to be thinking this way. I talk about AI from a high level. I don't get into specifics,
Yeah.
because what's the point? It's going to be out of date by
Yeah,
tomorrow.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm trying to create more of a timeless, and again, this idea of a mindset change, rather than, do this step by step in AI, and here's that end result.
Yeah. One of the things I thought about as I was reading it was that if I was a customer success manager, I would basically go and buy the book for all my team, and at the next team meeting, I would basically just hand that out and say, "Read it." Now, I would know that only 30% of the people would read it, because you're never going to get everybody basically reading it. But those 30% who are the A players, who will self educate, will be the people that will get promoted.
Yeah, that's my hope. I'd rather want it to be higher. I think one of the things that people are gravitating towards it, because there's stories in it, and it's some of my
Yes.
personal stories,
Yeah.
so people can really, they can empathize. And a lot of people have said that I'm right. I've written the life that they've lived,
Yeah.
and that many people who are very experienced saying, "Oh, I wish I would have read this like 10 years ago,"
Mm,
which is very, gratifying for myself for
mm.
the effort that I put in. And for teams, I do have resources. Like there's a bunch of free resources, because the other thing is that you can't just read it and you're done. You have to put into practice these
Yeah.
things that I talk about. And there's even like a book club resource for as well of teams, because you're just to your point, several teams are purchasing it and they're reading it as a group.
Right. Okay. Chad, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, The Strategic Customer Success Manager, a blueprint for elevating your impact and advancing your career. There
Yes.
you go. If I wanted to buy one, where could I get one from?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and it's on various local book sites as well, but Amazon is across the world. And if you go to Strategic Customer Success, you can just click. There's a button there, and it will take you to the right Amazon site.
Okay, excellent. And Chad, we can get you on LinkedIn.
You can.
Excellent. Chad, thank you so much for coming on. Fantastic book. Not seen one anything like it. Really enjoyed it, and I agree with you. It's not just about the it's not just about the information you share. It's the stories as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate it. Great,
You're
great
welcome.
question.